1 ounce of gold is still missing. The chain is still missing. The wallet, the leather wallet purse with the pendant is still missing. I received a call from one officer by the name of Sanders, well, constable by the name of Sanders, that I should come down to the Pashadnagar police station. I did so with my mom and a brother. And when we go down there, the officer, Sanders, signaled to me like this. And he said, come. And I go to him. He said, are you the person that lost the blackest bag on the seawall? I said, yes. He said, well, your bag would have been dropped off here on Friday. I started to tell him what was in my bag. And while me telling them what was in my bag, shortly after, I realized that he was getting a little, hesitant as to bring in my bag. Police Constable Sanders and a next police by the name of Anthony at that time went to the back of the station. They spent about 10 minutes or so, 10 to 15 minutes they spent behind there. And then he came back and he take a seat. He said, no. Two Caucasian people would have picked up your stuff at Campbellville School Street in a black plastic and Ziploc plastic or so, and they brought it to the station. Then he goes on to say, he had his phone in his hands, He said, I am calling this person to bring some of your stuff. And they're not answering their phone. I don't know what happened, right? So said, what you're talking about? Who is it you're talking about? He said, man, this woman's supposed to be bringing these things into him. I said, okay. I left puzzled, right? They had me running to the station for 7 months. Insult from one insult. To a point where they even mentioned that I'm running all over. But who do I turn to when they're the persons that's supposed to be protecting us as citizens in this country? 1 ounce of gold is still missing. The chain is still missing. The wallet, the leather wallet purse with the pendant is still missing. The perfume the oil, my $75,000,
pen.
my pen, my kid's bird string in the bottle, all my valuables would have still missing, and we would then take legal action and go to the press with the matter.
Are you convinced that it was the police who took your stuff from the bag and that the bag was returned there with everything in it?
Yes, yes. Presently, my attorney, that is Mr. Sobers and Mr. Hughes, we're going to pursue with private criminal charges against each one of the ranks, the detectives, the station sergeant, and the constables, and also Anita Braffett, because I have faith in God, and I think that justice in this matter should prevail.
I started teaching with the Ministry of Education on September 5th, 2011, if I remember correctly. But I have been teaching in the church and in youth groups before then. I guess this academic year makes it my 10th year in the teaching profession.
Since the onset of COVID-19, the teaching profession has been really affected, the entire education sector. How have you been coping with that?
It has changed the dynamics of education so distinctly. Like it's as if everyone has to have a knowledge or is required to be computer literate and tech savvy. So it was not difficult for me to adapt because everyone who knows me know that I'm all about that tech world. I'm all into that stuff. So the challenge was not with me, but it was with everyone else trying to adapt and teaching others to adapt as well. So I really didn't have to adapt, so to speak, but teach others to adapt. And that was the challenge, basically. At my school, Hustideren Primary, the term Hustideren is Dutch there. It means house of animals. So at my school, the only means of teaching basically virtually is via WhatsApp. The reason we cannot teach via Zoom or use Google Classroom or any one of these other high-tech platforms is because um, we don't have the internet service here in Essequibo. It's terrible, really. As I'm having this interview, I'm in school, as you can tell with the chalkboard behind me, because the internet is so poor, it's unreliable. Um, we are paying basically $10,000 a month for internet that we are limited to only 50 gigs per month. So as you could imagine, if you're streaming every day, that's going to finish in like a matter of days. It therefore means that we cannot do virtual classes as the schools in Georgetown, and we have to settle for WhatsApp, where we just send short videos and instructions and voice note and worksheets in PDF. That's as much as we can do now because the internet access on the SQL course is a very sore point. And let's hope with the new liberalization of the telecommunications sector, SQL course gets major upgrades so we can upgrade our teaching style and use different platforms as well.
What are some of the challenges with using WhatsApp to teach? I know like you won't have the interaction and stuff that you would have on other platforms.
The major challenge with WhatsApp is on availability of parents. Let's face it, not every child has a device. And sometimes you're sending work to the parent is working and then gets home late and then has to do that all by themselves. It's kind of confusing at times. Um, the other major challenge we encounter is poverty. Let's say in a class of 25, there may be about 10 pupils that can afford a tablet. And of that 10, only 7 could afford the internet access. So currently my enrollment in class is about 33. but I only have like 20 in the group, in the WhatsApp group. And of that 20, there are only about 13 of them that have access to internet full time for classes.
If you're to say or ask for the authorities to do something to help the teachers and students on the Essequibo coast, what will you ask for them to get done?
Um, I believe personally that the government at this point in time can support parents and teachers by making internet available at a cheaper cost and ensuring that pupils have access to the internet and to devices. Um, all that we need is basically to have affordable and reliable internet access. And that's the first step. I mean, there are many of us who are tech savvy who would be willing to train the other teachers to, use ICT to deliver the curriculum and delivering lessons.
In a telephone interview with the newsroom on Thursday, government advisor Dr. Jennifer Westford said that the government is continuing its engagement with striking healthcare workers and the Guyana Public Service Union (GPSU). But while majority of the issues that push the healthcare workers to down tools have already been resolved, Dr. Westford said more time and negotiation is needed to resolve the issues related to COVID-19 risk allowances. One of the major issues for the nurses in the issuance of COVID-19 risk allowance, and while the government has set aside some $150 million in the 2020 emergency budget for frontline workers, Dr. Westford said the substantial issue will not be resolved with a click of the finger.
All of the issues that we have been dealing with so far, most of them have been resolved and that's resolved on the ground. Most of them are issues that could have been resolved and can be resolved and they're being done.
My final question.
Other issues that cannot be resolved immediately are being addressed also.
And what are those? That is what I was going to ask. What are the outstanding issues?
I don't think I wish to say that to you, but they're most of them are administrative issues within the various institutions.
And could I ask specifically if you were able to resolve the issue related to risk allowances?
That is the issue that will not be resolved immediately. That is one of the issues that will have to be resolved with discussions and negotiations.
Okay.
That is not something that can be resolved by the snap of your finger.
Meanwhile, on Wednesday, President Irfan Ali scolded the striking nurses for breaking the law, even as he promised momentous improvements on their salaries and working conditions in the next 5 years. President Ali, during an interview with NewsSource, said even as the nurses are making their demands, they must understand that there are laws and those laws have to be followed.
Whilst we know that they're operating in a COVID environment, just like every frontline workers, and there is greater risk, we appreciate that. We have to work within the confines of affordability and the economy, and I want to assure the nurses that this government is committed to ensuring our promises and our commitment to them over the 5-year period is realized, and I can assure them, Gordon, that their lives and their families' life is going to improve tremendously.
The president gave no commitment on risk allowances but pointed out that under the $150 million, frontline workers at the Georgetown Hospital have begun to receive their allowances. Kurt Campbell, Newsroom.
Chief Executive Officer of GuySuCo, Sesnarayan Singh, during a tour of the Blairmont estate on Wednesday, explained that GuySuCo currently produces three main products: packaged sugar, bagged sugar, and bulk sugar. However, the industry suffers a loss with production of bulk sugar, and as a result, GuySuCo will now be focusing on producing value-added products which will be exported to the Caribbean and North American markets. $3 billion was allocated to GuySuCo, of which $2.2 billion will be used to reopen the Rose Hall, Enmore, and Skeldon estates, and the remaining $0.8 billion to recapitalize the current estates, Iflot, Blairmont, and Albion.
We're trying to lift everything up to a different level because GuySuCo is real. GuySuCo is not in a mood right now to be a loser. We are going to win this battle. And how do we win this battle? By selling sugar at the right price level and the right products. And the other way we're going to win this battle is by looking at the cost chain and ensuring that we can cut out, we identify what are the value-added costs and celebrate them. And the ones that are not adding value, what we call the non-value-added costs, we're going to make those costs our enemy, and we're going to attack them. So we're going to make procurement more efficient. We're going to make sure that we're not spending too much on fluff and puff, but we're going to focus on the factory, we're going to focus on the fields, we're going to focus on the cane transportation route, and we're going to ensure that the elements that will bring greater value to GuySuCo in the short term are resourced.
Estate manager Houghton Griffith said only 3 packaging lines are operating at the Blairmont estate. The 3 lines have a capacity of packaging roughly 65 to 70 tons of sugar per day. The manager said another packaging line will make a huge difference to the production at the estate.
Problem is that our factory produces on average 200 to 220 tons of sugar. That's our potential. And therefore you'll see that the packaging plant will not be able to package all our sugar. So what Steve was saying about the investments is that in our medium term, and I'll keep it on the CE's agenda as a medium term, not long term, that we expand our packaging lines to include more machines that will have us see all our sugar packaged.
Meanwhile, GuySuCo will also be focusing on short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans. The short-term plan, the CEO explained, is that the Enmore estate, which currently reopened the packaging plant, will primarily focus on producing packaged products for the local market, while the Blairmont estate will focus exclusively on exporting the packaged products. The medium-term plan is to secure private-public partnership to help build a market for the value-added products such as refined sugar, ethanol, and rum manufacturing, while the long-term plan will be a 5-year turnaround plan to implement efficient ways to keep the sugar industry afloat as time changes. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Isanel Patwo.
Opposition Member of Parliament Annette Ferguson, in a strongly worded statement on Thursday, said the People's Progressive Party government must discontinue efforts to remove the squatters from the lands which belong to the Guyana Sugar Corporation GuySuCo and for which the company now needs as part of its revitalization efforts. She contended that the regularization of the Success East Coast Demerara squatting area is the more sensible thing to do.
The Minister of Housing, Colin Crowell, is powerless. And I repeat, is powerless. He is clueless and without any solutions. The APNU AFC demands that the PPP acts with compassion, meaningfully consults with the citizens in desperate need of housing, and takes urgent action to regularize. And I repeat, and take urgent actions to regularize the squatters at Success.
The former minister criticized the government for what she said was a reckless and heartless approach to have the squatters removed. Several notices were issued to the squatters by GuySuCo, pleading with them to remove from the lands as the company looks to make a big comeback in sugar cultivation. Failure by the squatters to remove led to the police and relevant authorities moving in to remove an access bridge and demolish structures. GuySuCo issued one final notice for the squatters to remove by October 5, with threats to flood the lands if they did not move by that day, but even those threats did little to move the squatters. Even with the Central Housing and Planning Authority engaging the squatters to help with relocation, Ferguson insists that the best plan would be to have the squatters remain there and the areas now regularized and for the proper infrastructure to be put in.
Instead of consultation, the PPP is focused on confrontation. The PPP promised 50,000 house lots to the people, and so far have delivered 0 house lots and have gone in reverse, throwing off, shooting off, flooding out, and removing Guyanese citizens from house lots in their own country.
Ferguson said the issue never came up when she served as minister, as she empathized with the squatters who she said are in dire need of housing. Squatting has been an issue that both past and current governments have had to deal with. Ferguson said the former government had hoped to abolish squatting by its second term. Kurt Campbell, Newsroom.
Chief Medical Officer Dr. Narain Singh explained that the new machine will allow for 200 to 300 tests per day. Dr. Singh further said that samples coming from hinterland regions will now take at least a day to get back results. Currently, the test results take 48 to 72 hours when done with the National Reference Lab. However, testing is done privately at a cost of $25,000 at the Eureka Medical Lab, which is the only private lab authorized to do COVID-19 testing.
So the capacity of the lab has improved. We have gotten some pieces of equipment from China that's being presently installed, and that's going to reduce the testing time, the time from waiting for results. So we hope that can reduce the time from about up to 2 to 3 hours. You can get within 2 to 3 hours. You can get the results now because of this additional piece of equipment.
What equipment is this?
This is what we call an extractor, that how to extract the viral genetic material from the. So it takes a faster time to get the results.
Meanwhile, with the 24 additional ventilators that arrived in the country on Thursday, and which were also donated by the Chinese government, regional hospitals such as Linden, New Amsterdam, Sodi and Bartica will now be boosted to treat critical COVID-19 patients. As it relates to the high increase in deaths due to COVID-19, Dr. Singh explained that the age of patients is a huge risk factor, along with chronic medical conditions. Majority of the patients who have died were above 65-year-old. As of October 7, 2020, the death toll was 98, but Dr. Narain said this is not alarming.
But the treatment now is much more better than we have improved. There's even this drug that we're trying now, this antiviral that has Anovir that is available. We have plasma therapy for treat patients who are really, really critically ill. We're in a better position than what we had started before. That there's been what we were doing before and what we're doing now. Things are much more improved.
Currently, the COVID-19 hotspots in the country are regions 1 and 4, with region 4 accounting for over 1,500 of the confirmed cases in the country. Dr. Singh said getting citizens to change their response towards the disease will contribute to lessening the spread of COVID-19. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Isanela Pato.
His comments came in a recent interview with Newsroom Sport, where he was questioned on what would it take for more homegrown talents to progress into the Golden Jaguars senior setup. While a strong point was made for young talents to be quickly exported to Europe, if possible, he was pellucid on the fact that a stronger professional system is needed. The Elite League, which started with great promise in 2015, but has lost steam from a combustion of varying issues. According to Nurse, the bottom line is that players need to be able to earn from the sport so they can dedicate the necessary hours to become successful.
We giving players false hopes with the national team, because if I live in Guyana and I wake up every morning and I cannot go to my job as a professional player every day in Guyana and wake up and go and train in an environment and wake up every morning and do what I love, then how can we give those players expectations of making a national team and keeping the dream alive? Well, we're not creating the dream platform in and around our everyday environment. So we've got to start in Guyana by creating more professional, semi-professional clubs where the players in Guyana can dream and actually have an occupation and wake up in the morning every day and go and do the job that they love. And based upon the success of that, they aspire to reach the national team.
Nurse, who coaches the MLS Next, which is a new paradigm for player development in the United States, said it is important that players are exposed to a professional system from an early age.
And the age of professionalism is getting younger and younger and younger. So the longer that our youngsters don't progress and develop, their years in the game are getting shorter because, you know, the younger players are now hitting the professional age. You have Tottenham, the average age in the team is like 22 years old in the senior team. So the opportunity to become professional is becoming younger, but the window of opportunity is getting shorter. So we still have a lot of work to do on ground zero.
However, he is enthused about the level of progress and passion by head coach Marcio Maximo on youth development.
The national coach is very, very committed, which I like, to developing the local players. And he spends a lot of time with the local players in Guyana doing the best that he can for them. And you know, he has his quota of, he wants X amount of local players in the national team, which is good because we have the talent. You know, we have young players who can make the national team, but we need to create that daily environment for them.
He further indicated he has a passion to return and coach in Guyana, given his wealth of experience. For the newsroom, Akim Green.
Ninval submitted his resignation to the relevant authorities on Monday, citing personal reasons which he wished would remain private at this time. In an invited comment, Ninval told Newsroom that he's still committed to the development of boxing in the Caribbean.
Well, I still remain the Vice President of the America's Boxing Confederation, which is in itself is an important organization and an arm of AIBA. As it relates to the development of boxing in the Caribbean as a region has to chart a course and has to resolutely stay on that course. I think at times such as these, with such a tough battle looming in December, which is the election of the president of AIBA, you will need to have your most trusted, your most respected, and your strongest soldiers on hand. That is what I think the Caribbean will need to do right now, is to be able to get a strong team together in order to make sure that the right decisions are made. And when I say the right decisions, it means the decisions that will benefit the Caribbean most.
Ninval said over the years, Caribbean boxing development has been left on the back burner, and what is needed now are tough negotiators in hand to lift it out of the abyss.
I do trust that the persons who will come on board will put the Caribbean first, because that is what is needed foremost, and not have egos and personal interests at the forefront. If you ask me, I think this can be done, and hopefully it is done. As it relates to my future in Caribbean boxing, I'll always remain in Caribbean boxing. Boxing is a passion, and once you accept the offer, you should fulfill the task. Many a times we find persons who are there for many other different reasons, but it has to be a passion, and my hope is that the Caribbean can see better days, and I will lend support and lend advice into making this a reality.
Following Ninval's resignation, the Caribbean Steering Committee for Boxing was hit with another resignation, with the Vice Chairman Cecil Ford of Trinidad and Tobago deciding to walk. While it is not clear what prompted Ford to resign, he, like Ninval, offered his support and advice to aid the development of the sport in the region. Reporting for Newsroom, I'm Avinash Ramza.